Welcome. This is the Late Late with BT, where views with security and law are being provided to you, the public. I have 5 Time magazines that we're going to try to get through, God willing, and UN News. So the 5 that we're going to try to get through is February 4th, February 11th, 2019, December 10th, 2018, January 28th, 2019, November 5th, 2018, and September 17th, 2018. But first, for UN News. 60 is the new 50. Rethinking aging in the SDGs area. Blowing out the birthday candles, a newly minted sexagenarian would often think, but I don't feel 60. And demographers back that sentiment with data that documents the remarkable revolution in longevity, which is redefining the meaning of turning 60. Today, that is true for 15 countries, but UNDES's population division expects that number to grow to 145 countries by the end of the century, covering most of the world's population. The meeting will be held in Bangkok, Thailand from 25 to 26 February 2019 and is expected to be attended by about 80 to 100 government officials, academia, civil society, and the media from all over the world. So, just to remind you, we do this show completely live. So, when we share information, it's information that we haven't um, checked out. Well, not necessarily checked out, but that we haven't read before. So, the pause is just to find information that's relevant to the show and the market for the show. Inclusive social development essential to achieve the global goals. High and worsening inequality is becoming the defining issue of our time, said UN Justice Undersecretary General at a recent meeting of the General Assembly's Third Committee. Organizations accredited to the UN Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC, member states and UN agencies will come together to build on the outcomes of the 73rd session of the UN General Assembly and the past Commission. The role of this commission is of crucial importance to providing substantive, engaging, technical, and expert advice with concrete and action-oriented policy recommendations to ECOSOC and member states, remarked Vice Chair of the Bureau of the Commission's 57th session. Take action for a more equal world. International fora are attaching increasing attention to inequality as governments and leaders increasingly realize that inequality is a significant barrier to eradicating poverty, maintaining global economic growth, and achieving sustainable development for all. That is why reducing inequalities is a central concept in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, expressed in Sustainable Development Goal 10, but also in the principle of leaving no one behind. The Commission will examine social protection policies that have proved to be effective at the national level in a coherent and integrated way. You too can get involved and have your say to ensure that vulnerable groups are protected and not left behind. On 15 February 2019, the Commission will hold a civil society forum at the UN headquarters in New York. Non-governmental organizations have long been a powerful voice in the debate on inequalities, and this would be their chance to advocate for social protection for all. And that's it for UN News. So we're going to start with September 17th, 2018. The brief. Behind the calls for the Pope to resign. Monica Lewinsky. I left because it is more important than ever for women to stand up for themselves and not allow others to control their narrative. John Kelly, White House Chief of Staff, according to Pulitzer Prize winner Bob Woodard's forthcoming account of the Trump presidency, the White House said the book was nothing more than fabricated stories. The brief. The bulletin. Announced the decision not to run for a third term by Chicago mayor in a surprise speech on September the 4th. Rescinded. An invitation for Donald Trump's former chief strategist, Stephen Bannon, to headline the New Yorker Festival after other speakers threatened to drop out. The brief time with. Lightbox. Although officials have promised to reconstruct the building, most of its 20 million artifacts and artworks are lost forever. Washington takes on the threat of big tech. Loathed by the right, under fire from the left. Spending too much time in the bathroom? If you're experiencing one or more of these symptoms, it may be time to talk to your doctor. John McCain. By the end of a week of tributes, it was clear that Washington's political class was mourning more than the passing of a friend. The America of John McCain has no need to be made great again, because America was always great, declared Meghan McCain, the senator's daughter, drawing a rousing ovation. That effort appears unlikely to succeed because some of McCain's GOP colleagues would prefer to keep the name of a segregationist Democrat on the building rather than re-christen it for a man disliked by much of the GOP base. In the final one on October 26, 1967, his Skyhawk dive bomber was downed by a missile that blew off its wing. McCain became a prisoner of war, enduring more than 5 years of captivity and beatings because he refused to defy the military's ethics that the first prisoner taken should be the first to be released. Bipartisan approaches to big problems became a McCain hallmark, presaging his repeated and incomplete attempts to overhaul the nation's immigration system. McCain for years sought a bipartisan solution to the nation's broken immigration system. Trump's campaign caught fire when he stoked anti-immigration fears. Trump mocked McCain's years as a prisoner of war and refused to back down, even after the senator's diagnosis. Under the neo-Gothic columns and before a national television audience, the collection of political leaders assembled in his honor never mentioned the president's name, but they didn't need to. It was a tableau from a bygone era. They look at him as if John came from another age, that he lived by a different code, an ancient, antiquated code, where honor, courage, character, integrity, duty were what mattered, because that was obvious how John lived his life. But the truth is, John's code was ageless. Rest in peace, John McCain. And Tim Kaine, a few words, but he clapped me on the back and it was clear he loved it. And my advice to you is just get right back to work. I've been thinking of those words a lot in the days since his death. It is good to get back to work. Tim Kaine. Murphy Brown heads back to work. The Romanovs of Amazon, but they all harbor delusions of grandeur. Characters in each story claim to be descended from the Russian royal family. Camping. HBO. Jennifer Garner and David Tennant team up with Girls creator Lena Dunham and Jenny Connor for a comedy series about a celebrity camping trip that goes terribly and hilariously awry. If you like This Is Us, you should watch A Million Little Things. One man's suicide brings a group of estranged friends back together to support one another and investigate why his death occurred. November 5th, 2018. The Brief. A much lauded charity in Liberia turned out to be a predator's playground. Theatrical lawyer Michael Avenatti tries to build his political brand. The Brief. The Brief opener. The Brief news. Open. The bridge spans 34 miles and costs about $20 billion. Jamie Lee Curtis by Sam Lansky. She brings up her new film Halloween, a new imagining of the granddaddy of the contemporary horror movie, and the book she's reading about World War I, as well as trauma and healing in the state of America, and soon we're both getting emotional. And over an hour has passed before I even think to turn my tape recorder on. Her performance as Laurie Strode, a teenage babysitter being hunted by the killer Michael Myers, and the string of horror films in which she subsequently starred earned her the title Scream Queen, though she's also been in a lot of other kinds of movies. The Oscar-nominated heist comedy A Fish Called Wanda and James Cameron's action thriller True Lies, in which she delivered a new iconic striptease, and Disney's 2003 remake of Freaky Friday, in which she body swapped with Lindsay Lohan. Green's vision was to wipe the slate clean, as if the many other sequels and spin-offs from the Halloween story, both those that featured Curtis and those that didn't, never happened. But it's also a film that's curious about how people cope, even many years after being traumatized, and about the nebulous boundary between anxiety and paranoia when you have a very good reason to be afraid. It helps that, unlike many horror movies, including several in the Halloween franchise, this new one manages to be cheeky, smart, and generally scary. Yet there was also space for Curtis to play with his character, who's since become the archetype for the final girl, the horror movie heroine who finds a way to survive. How quickly you can hit the little booster button that brightens you up. A few weeks later, Halloween opens to glowing reviews and a monster take at the box office, earning over $77.5 million. It marks several milestones, including the biggest horror movie opening with a female lead and the highest grossing film opening with a female lead over 55. And she sends me a selfie with the Sydney Opera House in the background. Lightbox. Some are expected to request asylum there, but many are determined to keep heading north to the next border with hopes of making it into the U.S. Well, good luck too. Saudis try to go back to business as usual as Khashoggi storm rages. The mooted transformation of Saudi Arabia from petrostate to cutting-edge modern economy by 2030 has lost critical momentum. Jamie Ducharme. It was my job to be there. In an October survey by the Associated Press, Newark Center for Public Affairs research, about a third of caregivers said they struggled to manage their own health and had skipped going to the doctor, even when they were sick or injured because of their duties. That's likely because of the progressive nature of Alzheimer's, which eventually requires virtually around-the-clock care, says a health scientist administrator of the National Institute on Aging. Massachusetts this year joined a small but growing group of states to pass paid family leave laws, but there is currently no such law at the federal level. People often feel guilty complaining to family and friends, but the hotline is staffed with people with first-hand knowledge of Alzheimer's care. So I go through Alzheimer's with my mom. They said that she has first stage Alzheimer's. So I can't necessarily say that's exclusively what it is, but it said that they need all, the care is around the clock care. And it really truly is. Melissa Chan. Atop a massage table during a sea cruise she had booked hoping to escape reality. I just cried. The 63-year-old views guns as a plague that needs to be eradicated. She wants other women to be empowered to take the action she could not. They were situated in a tableau that evokes not only the spirit of debate associated with the Founding Fathers, but something else as well, the unity that flows from a sense of shared enterprise. A firearm can be a beautiful thing, depending on the eye of the beholder. Black Americans are more likely to be shot than their white counterparts, and community leaders say much of the gun culture is tied to a lack of access to education, jobs, and opportunities. Here's the data behind the arguments that support different views. Convicted prison inmates who had a gun at the time of their offense had acquired it through back channels. What more the CDC might have found, we cannot say. Congress voted in 1996 to limit the scope of research into gun deaths and injuries by the country's premier health agency. The biggest point of contention is the minimum number of victims that qualifies as mass. It was eclipsed by the slaughter of 58 people at a Las Vegas music festival on October 1st, 2017. And in Northern California, Representative Eric Swalwell, a Democrat, stoked gun owners' worst fears by proposing that they be required to sell their military-style semi-automatic assault rifles to the government in a mandatory buyback. Wow. Mandatory buyback. You have to be on a polar opposite sides, and I think the polarities are the loudest. Gun and ammo sales soared when Barack Obama was president, as gun owners stockpiled whatever rumors said was about to be outlawed by the feds. In March, filed for bankruptcy. In addition to their own stereotypes and intolerances, they must lug into the public arena the burden of justified regulation. In other words, differentiating between the impulse to do something versus doing something likely to achieve the desired results. A challenge that remains when the welling emotions summoned by a grieving parent have ebbed. Yet, as we learn from listening to many of the voices in our project, two clear things: responsibility and the need for extraordinary care around lethal force are common to both the ethos of gun ownership and the stated goals of those who seek controls. That was the first step in bridging the divide, says a 36-year-old single mother and firearms instructor who lives in Connecticut about 7 miles from Sandy Hook Elementary School. Mark Hughes. Before the real gunman was identified, the Dallas Police Department wrongly labeled Hughes a suspect, tweeting out his photo and a plea to the public to please help us find him. Steve Scalise. Republican legislatures were practicing charity baseball game on June 14, 2017, when a gunman opened fire. That horrible incident only solidified my strong beliefs that you want law-abiding citizens to be able to defend themselves and others, because there are bad guys out there. And if only the bad guys have weapons, then that means everybody else is vulnerable. In one of my trainings, they mentioned this area that has the lowest crime, and that's because everybody owns a gun. Michael Foreman. What we need to be focusing on is violence. But I would tell you that a brick or a bat or a fist or a knife makes you just as dead as the bullet does. From blind rage to blind faith, reading novels to casting ballots, 6 writers on the promising pitfalls of bridging America's political chasm. To Yari Jones. An estimated 20,000 black South African students staged a demonstration and they were gunned down by the police. Reports said the number killed was somewhere in the neighborhood of 23, but my father and his friends insisted the number had to be many times that. In my understanding of the world then, I put the blame squarely on golf gas. The other child's mother picked me up and buckled us in the back seat. I find myself annoyed by the hand wringing about how we need to find common ground. Back to the gas station on that summer day. I blubbered the words with quivering lips. To soothe me, my father took me out for an ice cream cone, but I couldn't bear to eat it. Both the writer and the reader bring their experience to the page. Michael Avenatti believes the only way to beat a bully is to beat him. And the idea that the 47-year-old lawyer could be the Democratic presidential nominee in 2020 began to appear not entirely unrealistic. If it suddenly seems like Avenatti is everywhere, that's because he is. That was before he met Stormy Daniels, the adult film actor whom Trump paid $130,000 days before the 2016 election to keep quiet about a one-night stand she alleged she had with him in 2006. With Avenatti's help, Daniels' lawsuit metastasized into a criminal probe of Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, that has produced the first sworn allegations in open court of criminal behavior by the president. But the party's rank and file will have the final say. Democrats recently put much of the power to pick their presidential nominee in the hands of the grassroots by weakening the superdelegate system. And the base is out for blood. More than 6 million people have signed a petition calling for Trump's impeachment. I began to wonder, he says, if maybe this was bigger than me. Avenatti and Trump have taken opposite approaches to hair loss, and perhaps it says everything or nothing about the contrast between the two men that one constructed the world's most aggressive comb over, while the other eliminated the issue entirely. You've got to be brave to go up against Trump, Wilson says. But after his fiery oration brought the house down, the reporters were just ashes, he said. According to Daniel's new book, Full Disclosure, she called several other lawyers first, but they didn't seem to take her seriously. The family moved often for his father's job as an Anheuser-Busch manager, landing in the suburbs of St. Louis by the time he was a teenager. He spent time during college working as a dirt digging operative, flying around the country researching candidates for the consulting firm run by the bare knuckle former White House chief of staff. But the firm notched big wins: a $39 million settlement on behalf of two executives who sued their former employer, an $80.5 million class action settlement on behalf of Jews whose remains had been dumped in a mass grave by the LA cemetery where they were buried. In February 2017, a month before the arbitration trial was to start, a judicial panel found that the firm had maliciously and fraudulently concealed its revenue numbers. Filings in a related bankruptcy case showed that Avenatti's firm had tax troubles. In 2013, Avenatti teamed up with the actor Patrick Dempsey to buy the Seattle-based coffee chain Tully's. But just 2 months after they finalized the deal, Dempsey sued to get out of the partnership, claiming in court that Avenatti had borrowed $2 million to help buy the company without telling him. In one December 2017 incident, he showed up and demanded to be led into the Newport Beach house, leading the police to be called, according to her legal family. One of the last times he'd been alone with a child, she claimed, he sent the boy home alone with his driver, with no car seat. Asked who they belonged to, he joked, Ivanka, wouldn't that be a story? Michael has picked up the corpse of the Democratic Party and breathed some life into it. Beneath the pugnacious persona, Avenatti's own political instincts are rather conventional. But these are dangerous times to ignore the power of desperate partisans. He fights, and he wins. To many of the beleaguered party faithful, that may be enough. Michael Avenatti. December 10th, 2018. The Brief. Record-setting volume of online sales on Black Friday, including $2 billion spent via smartphones, according to Adobe Analytics, was $6.22 billion. I was thinking about buying a computer, but I said I had to wait. Then I looked online, and it was pretty much the same price, so I wasn't really getting a good deal. So whether it was Black Friday or whether it was not Black Friday, it still didn't matter. The Brief. The Bulletin. Search called off for man killed by tribe. Indian officials announced their decision not to retrieve the body of John Allen Chau, an American Christian missionary killed by tribespeople when he landed on the isolated North Sentinel Island on November 17th. That's kind of weird because it kind of makes you put in the perspective that he didn't have any business landing there anyway, and they were protecting their land. The Brief News. George Steer. President Emmanuel Macron said on November 23rd that France will return 26 works of art to Benin, 136 years after colonial forces took them. Wow. 136 years. The Brief Milestones. Stranded. A group of 145 pilot whales on a New Zealand beach. Half of the whales were dead by the time authorities found them on November 24th, and the other half had to be put down. Wow. Half were dead, the other half had to be put down. Was it that traumatic that you had to put them out? Unless they were hurt and they meant they had to put them out of that misery. That they couldn't be, that they were so critical that they couldn't, life support wouldn't help them. The Brief Silence. Lightbox. As migrants fleeing violence and poverty neared a crossing leading to San Diego, some tried to bypass a barricade. Jamie Ducharme. But the latest federal guidelines support a much broader definition of what it means to be active, one that includes less obvious pursuits like taking the stairs, raking leaves, and even bird watching. Recent research suggests that activities you never think of as exercise, like running errands or cleaning the bathroom, still have longevity perks. That every moment counts may be the message Americans need to hear to get more active, says professor of kinesiology at the Indiana University Bloomington School of Public Health. The fitness industry tends to keep people focused on the standard modes of activity, but it can be a big hurdle to go to a gym or to join a class, especially if you are older, not fit, or overweight. Of course, formal exercise will get you to the goalpost faster. And vigorous exercise often brings the biggest health benefits, at least for young, healthy people. But even if you don't move enough to meet the federal recommendations, any progress toward them likely corresponds to better health, says Michael Lamont, a research associate professor of epidemiology and environmental health at the University at Buffalo, and one of the authors of the recent study touting the benefits of cleaning and running errands. We need to go back to the old days where movement was a way of life. So, of the 6 easy ways to move more that they shared, walking is linked to health benefits like lower body weight and blood pressure, better mental health, and a longer life. So, rack up extra steps by choosing a distance spot. If you have a short commute, leave traffic behind and sneak in exercise with person-powered transport. So, they're saying ditch the car and walk or take a bike. So I just recently started, I was using everyday activities for my physical exercise. And I made a goal January 2019 for January 2020, but I hadn't actually started, I hadn't started working out at the gym. So it's just been little steps. I would visit the gym. Then I had clothes to work out. I had bought clothes that I would wear to work out. I bought sneakers that I would wear to work out. And then I finally put in the suitcase that I bought, and I made it inside the gym. And I took the suitcase inside the gym. So it was just little steps to get to the point. And then I heard a sermon from one of my pastors that was talking about the little steps as well. Like start with 1 push-up one day, then go to 2 push-ups the next day, or the next time. So last night was the first time I actually did a workout, and it felt really good. And I'm not doing the 1 push-up per day. I did 1 push-up on my knees and then 1 push-up on my toes. And I would do that for a week before I move on to 2, is what the idea is. But it was a good workout. I did 2 hours, and I'm trying to do at least 2 hours. I want to get to the point where I can just work out an hour and it'll be good. But I know I need to put more time into it. Like 4 to 6 hours of workout time. But the gym that I work out doesn't have group exercise. So I'm going to include exercise classes. So it's going to be rather interesting. And I'm involved with Silver Sneakers. So that's another story in itself. So yeah, if you don't even have a goal, but you should definitely make a goal to be physically active and start small. Start with those goals like running errands, grocery shopping, and maybe, if you have a goal to actually be in a gym or a fitness facility, or it could be a facility that focuses on one thing like swimming or, aqua aerobics, or there's so much that you can do to find, there's so much out there. And the best thing is to find something that you like and that you would like to do. And for me, when I got into fitness, it's something that I like. So it's just a matter of my mind reconnecting with the body that likes it and to just start it again. To compile the figures below, Time drew on data from Everytown, a gun safety organization, but applied its own criteria. January 28th, 2019. The brief. Will there be a Brexit? The tech backlash. At the border, Time spoke to residents of McAllen, Texas, the border city from which President Trump gave a January 10th speech urging the building of a wall, about what they think of the idea and whether it's worth a partial government shutdown. So my feelings on the wall is that I understand where he's coming from. Like one of those light boxes, the barrier, it looked like it was kind of like a wall, and the woman is at the top, the man is on the ground, and she's had a little baby, an infant, that she was handing to him. So I understand what they're saying, what he's saying about the wall and how he feels as though it will prevent people from doing things like that. But for me, it's a perspective of international relations. And if you're trying to, will it be less expensive? I'm not sold on spending billions and billions or even trillions of dollars or even billions of dollars on a wall that will decrease our international relations. And isn't there a way that we can work on our international relations? A wall would not be necessary? And would it be less expensive than billions of dollars to hire security that can be there on a 24-hour basis along those border areas instead of just in a I've never been, so I don't know what it looks like, but I imagine that there's that they're not lined up. And would that be less expensive if it were? $250 billion. And that's the rough weight in tons of the Antarctic ice lost each year since 2009, per a new study. Researchers found that the ice has melted significantly faster in recent years. The brief. The brief opener. The bulletin. Polish mayor dies after stabbing. The suspect, an ex-convict who blamed the mayor for his imprisonment, pleaded not guilty. The brief. News. Judge blocks census asks foreign citizenship. It's likely to come before the Supreme Court. Lightbox. Officials said they use recreation fees paid by visitors, which are not hit by the shutdown, to deal with maintenance issues. So one thing that I heard that came up regarding the shutdown was that they're presenting something that the president's staff will not get a paycheck either when federal employees are not getting paid. Now, mind you, they still have perks like housing, food, but the president. So I think that because you don't want to just feel as though you can just interrupt people's lives and it not have an effect on you. So I think that's a really good idea that when there is a federal shutdown, that the president or the president's staff, cabinet, get paid as well. because it kind of is like I can do this to you and it's not affecting you type situation. So what? Tim Cook. The problem is solvable. It isn't too big, too challenging, or too late. Innovation, breakthrough ideas, and great features can go hand in hand with user privacy, and they must. One of the biggest challenges in protecting privacy is that many of the violations are invisible. But what the retailer doesn't tell you is that it then turned around and sold or transferred information about your purchase to a data broker, a company that exists purely to collect your information, package it, and sell it to yet another buyer. The trail disappears before you even know there is a trail. Let's be clear, you never signed up for that. Meaningful, comprehensive federal privacy legislation should not only aim to put consumers in control of their data, it should also shine a light on actors trafficking in your data behind the scenes. That's why we believe the Federal Trade Commission should establish a data broker clearinghouse, requiring all data brokers to register, enabling consumers to track the transactions that have bundled and sold their data from face to face, and giving users the power to delete their data on demand, freely, easily, and online, once and for all. We cannot lose sight of the most important constituency, individuals trying to win back their right to privacy. Technology has the potential to keep changing the world for the better, but it will never achieve that potential without the full faith and confidence of the people who use it. So yeah, that's a good idea. Because you definitely want to have your privacy. It's like when it's something where they want, where you need assistance, they like, oh, we can't do this HIPAA law. But then when it's something else, it's like, oh, we can buy your data and sell it. So, because I've had a challenge with getting help for my mom, and because my brother and I are her only children, and neither of us go for her spouse. And it's like her spouse is given all this control and power over what goes on with her, and we're her children, and we care more about her than the spouse. So it's been a very challenging time. Donald Graham. The beneficiaries would be their Chinese competitors, not exactly paragons of respect for your privacy. Graham, the chairman of the board of Graham Holdings Company, was the publisher of the Washington Post from 1979 to 2000 and a board member of Facebook from 2009 to 2015. Speaking of China, they had mentioned that Kenya hadn't been able to pay their bills, so China was giving access to taking over their sea or their ships. So what interests me is that by there being a UN headquarters, a UN site in Kenya, it's like, how is that impacting, like what's going on there? They couldn't do anything to help or prevent that from happening. Jamie Ducharme. Swapping beef for protein-rich plants like beans, peas, and nuts has big benefits, not just for people's health, but also for the health of the planet, according to a report published in January by the World Economic Forum. If people, or WEF, If people all over the planet made one change, switching from beef to other sources of proteins, global greenhouse gas emissions will fall by 25% and diabetes deaths will drop by 5% in wealthy countries, the report estimates. In 2018, a third of U.S. consumers said they plan to buy more plant-based products in the next year, according to data from the independent market research firm Mentor. Cultured meat isn't yet approved by the Food and Drug Administration, but companies are ready. But raising insects for food is far more sustainable than traditional livestock because they emit less greenhouse gas, mature and reproduce quickly, and require much less land and water, according to a 2017 paper published in the journal Global Food Security. They're great for the planet too. A 2017 paper published in the journal Climatic Change predicted that the U.S. could achieve up to 74% of its greenhouse gas reduction goals by 2020 if Americans would just start eating beans instead of beef. Beans really fit that profile, being the best available replacement for beef, at least in terms of minimal environmental impact and maximal health impact, says an environmental social scientist at Harvard and co-author of the paper. The WEF also crowned nuts the best protein alternative to reduce emissions of carbon dioxide since they release virtually none during production. So I've been making that change to eliminate beef, but and they have Taco Bell. I adore Taco Bell, and it's like as long as Taco Bell is around, I don't know if I would stop eating beef, or at least theirs. Robert J. Brown. The civil rights power broker, 83, on his new memoir and being an ally to both Martin Luther King Jr. and Richard Nixon. How do you persuade executives to come to the table? Well, in my personal opinion, I would think that the persuasion wouldn't necessarily be a lot of persuasion because it would be a table that they would have been a part of. It would have already been in them or on their path. So they would just comply with that. As someone who brought a PR perspective to civil rights, what do you think of protests against police brutality like those led by Colin Kaepernick? So Robert J. Brown says, I don't want to be protesting against my country. We got the biggest laugh. February 4th, February 11th, 2019. The brief. The brief open. The brief news. Questions remain on BuzzFeed Trump report. BuzzFeed stood by the January 17th story, which has sparked talk of impeachment among some members of Congress. So they're considering impeaching the president. My support of Trump comes from, it's very complicated. So I stand with The Apprentice. It came at a time where I was going through The Apprentice with and getting into Africa and contributing to Africa, an African American company. And it was very timely. Um, Sentence. Egyptian TV presenter Mohammed al-Ghaiti to 1 year of hard labor by the Egyptian government for interviewing an anonymous gay man last year. Wow, 1 year of hard labor for interviewing an anonymous gay man. Nominated. Black Panther became the first superhero movie to be nominated for Best Picture. Elected. New York Yankees closer Mariano Rivera to the Baseball Hall of Fame on January 22nd. Died. Mary Oliver. Oliver, who had been treated for lymphoma, died at her home in Hobe Florida on January 17th. Writers borrowed her lines as epigraphs and readers held them close and taped them up and tweeted them out and even tattooed them because Oliver gave fresh spiritual ideas and purposefully plain speech. So speaking of God, we want to give a rest in peace to not only Mary Oliver, but Kim Porter and Christophe St. John. Michael Strahan. But that's just part of his broadcast portfolio. In addition to his role on GMA Day, he's a co-anchor on Good Morning America and executive producer and star of ABC's reboot of the $100,000 Pyramid Game Show. None of which is to say Strahan isn't turning his attention toward February 3rd in a Super Bowl matchup between the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams. Strahan knows a bit about dethroning the Pats' Tom Brady. We know they've beaten everybody under the sun, says Strahan, who in conversation circles his hands and touches his chest and animated. Strahan's time began in West Germany, where he grew up on an army base. Neither was carefully planned. He learned both on the fly. Ripper felt blindsided by the offer and did not report to work from the real league. She came back championing respect and communication in the workplace. I would have been excited to be at the White House, said Strahan. A couple of days before the NFC Championship game between the Los Angeles Rams and New Orleans Saints on January 20th, I asked Strahan what he would change about football if he were named NFL commissioner. You've got to get to Brady, Strahan says. The Patriots, who have made the big game 3 years running, own the experience. When you're playing for something bigger than yourself with a group of guys you love, that will get you going when you don't have anything left in the tank, says Strahan. A government by too few with Gregory Treverton. But there is something worse and more fundamental happening. After analyzing 2 decades of federal personnel data and conducting interviews and focus groups with employees before the shutdown, we concluded the U.S. government may not be able to respond capably to a greater national crisis or mount an adequate response if multiple domestic or foreign registries occur at the same time. These findings, which we in detail in a study published by the Nonpartisan Senior Executives Association, should be cause for serious concern to all Americans. Regardless of whether you think the federal government should be smaller or larger, we all want it to be effective during emergencies. Career employees who have served their country under one administration are often marginalized by the next. In fact, our federal workforce faces weeks of backlog, often to be handled with significantly fewer staff members compared with 20 years ago, and agencies stemming by Byzantine hiring processes, low morale, and high rates of departure. Robert T. Fraley. Despite consumer fears, the reality is GMO crops are safe and can help solve both the sustainability and food security issues our planet faces in the decades ahead. I believe it's possible to not only double the food supply by 2050, but also to do it on less land than we farm today. Bernard J. Tyson. The potential for data and analytics to be used in powerful new ways and improve the way healthcare is delivered is immense. My company, Kaiser Permanente, recently looked at whether we could use big data and machine learning to better predict the risk of self-harm or suicide after mental health visits. Jennifer Duggan. It ought to be hard for a species that occupies roughly 10% of the Earth's land to mess up 70% of the planet's Earth's entire surface. So it ought to be hard for a species that occupies roughly 10% of the Earth's land to mess up 70% of the planet's entire surface. From climate change and melting ice caps to islands of floating garbage, we are increasingly fouling what was once the perfectly chemically thermally balanced womb of all earthly life. The oceans are the world's largest ecosystem, home to 80% of the planet's biodiversity and account for more than 97% of its water. So Richmond is having an environmental film festival that's going on right now. It should be for the next week or so. I have something scheduled for tonight at Community Idea Station. So if you're in the Richmond area, it will be Richmond, Virginia area. That's the capital of Virginia. You should definitely check it out. If you're not, you can go to their website. I think it's rvaeff.com, or you can just Google RVA Environmental Film Festival, and it should list the different topics that they're discussing, and you might and contact information to regarding any of the films that they're showcasing. Don Steinberg. The U.S. National Institutes of Health is set to test male hormone halting gel that's rubbed onto the back and shoulders. The business of esports, competitive video gaming, is poised to exceed $1 billion. Union officials have been politicking to stop a brothel staffed with humanoid sex robots from opening. Bordellos are open for business in Barcelona, Turin, Moscow, and Toronto. Wow. Sex robots, robo bordellos. By one estimate, a traditional 10-acre cemetery contains enough bird wood to build 40 homes, common floor to fill a swimming pool. Studies say the market for edible bugs will be worth up to $1.2 billion by 2023. Around 2 billion people already eat crickets, mealworms, and other insects. Wow. I just don't see it. I don't see myself eating bugs. Now for John Lanchester. The trouble is that the rewards of that recovery are mostly going to the people who are already rich. The ethical basis for capitalism must be that it offers better life chances for a majority of citizens. The consequences of these are likely to be felt precisely on the weak points of the current economic order, where insecurity meets inequality and winner takes all societies collide with vanishing work and collapsing social cohesion. Some people believe that it's going to be on the scale of the Industrial Revolution, says the AI expert who co founded the pioneering machine learning company DeepMind. Other people believe it's going to be the class of its own above that. So there's been a catastrophe of unemployment. A girl born in the UK today has a better chance of living to be 100 years old than a woman of 80. What we need is to rethink the relationship between the individual, the corporate sector, and the state. In recent decades, we have seen a great risk shift, to borrow the term of the Yale social scientist Jacob Hacker. Individuals in temporary, insecure, gig like employment are taking on risks that used to belong to the corporate sector. Companies and individuals in the state must work together to build an enhanced and more flexible version of the welfare state that overlaps with lifelong training and education. A clear lesson of this populist moment is that it is not enough, when it comes to the big decisions about how our lives are arranged, for governments to simply shrug and blame forces outside their control. The architects of this new industrial revolution, by the way, agree with this proposition. The chief AI scientist at Facebook and one of the pioneers of deep learning said recently that every economist he has spoken to agrees that governments must take measures to compensate for rising inequality brought about by technology. While a new generation of robber barons controls huge sections of the U.S. economy, corporate profits surge, wages stagnate, and fewer ordinary workers have reason to believe in the capitalist system. That thought experiment is too neat for the real world, but the trends it describes are not. A new emphasis on the role of nation state, a new partnership between the state and the private sector and the individual, new action on lifelong learning and training, higher and fairer taxes, less security for big corporations. These things shouldn't be unthinkable. It is strange instead that the least likely thing on my wish list is the idea that elites will change their behavior. But elites may have to change if they don't want to change, if they don't want change to be imposed on them. This coming wave of technological transformation has the potential to be the most serious challenge modern capitalism has faced. And I'm going to pause there. That was John Manchester. So the richest 1% currently own 47% of global wealth and could own 64% of it by 2030. So that means that we need to think about global wealth and helping out globally. David Truer. The only reason it's a story is because we're continuing to bite the baited hook. That's what I kind of feel like what's going on with Virginia right now and the governor. And then, when the governor's controversy came about, then the lieutenant governor got a controversy. And then there's other people that's coming out saying, hey, I did this. As if, and I want to just let it out. And I want to just say I'm sorry or just that I did this before. And which is weird because it's like, how are you able to communicate what you did and which the Ralph Northam failed to do, and how have you moved forward? How does one balance? You describe how we got to a place where Indians are fully American, but also treated differently by the law. How does one balance that right to be different with the hope for being equal? How does one balance that right to be different with the hope of being equal? By embracing diversity and coming together with the idea of that, like was mentioned before, that we may have different feelings on whether the federal government should have more employees or less employees, so we all agree that we want the federal government to be prepared when emergencies occur. So it's just that same logic of wanting to embrace diversity and being consistent with that, even though you have differences. Is that in a recognition that we belong to sovereign nations which exist inside of the sovereign nation of the United States. The surface is ugly, but the depths are profound. In this example, I see a lot of what I was trying to communicate in the book, the ways in which Indians have not only endured America, but endeavored always to make it better. And we have an audience work spotlight. You don't have to decorate everything this holiday. Flaky, buttery, already perfect. Light, flaky, buttery club crackers by Keeper. So I was going back to school for interdisciplinary studies, getting a master in that, where I could focus on pastoral counseling and international relations. But I've since just changed it so that I just focus on international relations. Because I found that doing pastoral counseling, that there is, because in Taylor, Virginia, there's a separate certification or licensing when it comes to counseling versus being a peer support, doing peer support. and I'm pursuing peer support. So I don't want to have me pursuing pastoral counseling to step on the toes of me doing peer support. So I decided to just not do pastoral counseling and do international relations and do my peer support and still just try to get experience working in a church environment, which I'm going to be looking into. I've already looked into and get more information about that on tomorrow. So we're now doing the show once a month. We've already done January show, and this is the show for February. So we won't do another show until March. We will look into reviewing the 911 commission report. But right now, we are reviewing My Name is Earl, and there's 4 seasons. So we're going to start with season 1 and try to make our way through season 4 and get how it relates to the 911 terrorist attacks. So there's a lot with this than just My Name is Earl. And it says karma is a funny thing. So we're going to start on that as soon as possible. So that wasn't too bad. Got through 5 days of time. I don't have any new updates other than we're pursuing international relations because it's what we do. And the pastoral counseling, by me, I've been very active in the church since 2016. And I just, on one hand, I find that my social phobia is a disability when it comes to having success in the church. But then on the other hand, I don't want it to be. So I have a desire to get better. And one of the pastor's motto for 2019 is getting better before bigger. So I like the idea of, because I'm a nonprofit person. I am nonprofit, all the way. I get for profit. But when it comes to the church and doing things, like one of the churches that I go to has its own theater. So when it comes to doing things in the theater and having its own cafe and doing all these things, housing, it becomes very supportive of me because it's nonprofit and it's for God. And so the school that I'm going back to is a Christian school. So, I think now that, it's a shame that I didn't know about it before I went to school because I got my underwear from a state school. And if I would have known about it, I would have liked to have pursued it then. But my undergrad, I only applied to one school and one school only. And so if you haven't could tell by now, these shows, they are internationally focused and as it relates to relations and diversity, we embrace diversity. So it's not just security and law of the United States, it's security and law of all the different nations. And by us being focused on the baby market, we focus, it's not just focusing on American babies, we're focusing on all those different babies. So that's why our position with the wall becomes a little different because it seems like it's just focused on the United States. It's not, it puts us out of the international relations realm. And that's great if people want to, you know, transition to the United States. Well, we should have things in place when we support them doing it legally. They don't feel like, they have to do it illegally, or if illegal is all they know. Well, we're there saying that, you can be better. You don't have to go that way. You can be different. I was challenged with um, something that, where I had to go the other way and I had to be different and, I want to be better. And I pray that, it's going to work out because I made the right decision. Um, so we're going to, it's possible that we could maybe go into the Department of Corrections sometime in March. So look forward to more information about that. Um, so when we do the March show, I should be able to share where we're at with that at least. Um, it's a dangerous job, but like they said, somebody has to do it. So that's going to be quite interesting. Um, I'm trying to be still, in the days of storms, be still. And I feel like I'm going through a storm right now and have been going through a storm for um, decades, for over 3 decades. I've been going and in the midst of a storm. And, not to just force anything and to just be um, mindful of everything that's going on and to not be afraid and to give it all to God. Right. So we're still, so our celebrities are, we try to keep up. If you listen to the show, just try to stay in the loop and support us staying in the loop when it comes to certain celebrities, which are Brad Pitt, Sean Combs, Prince Harry, Sarah Shahi, Beyonce, and Alicia Keys. So we definitely get how they relate to the show, who this host is, and just they continue to be updated. And I appreciate them for being present and available with everything that we've done, we're doing, that we will do. And I hope to make that transition as soon as possible. Um, it's I don't know if it'll ever come or if my purpose is to always be behind the scenes and doing community drama. Um, so we'll, as a show, continue to update on that as well. And the growth has been remarkable. When we started, we knew nothing about peer support. And now we just dive right into it. And we'll be leading 2 groups this month um, at a peer one location in Chesterfield, Richmond. And that's all that I can. Any more updates? So, with regards to Better Before Bigger, this show has definitely gotten better. It's gotten better. Um, Peer support is a good move. We're hoping the Department of Corrections will be a move that will also be a good move. Um, and we're looking into federal, so we'll keep you updated on that as well. Um, and I know you may be thinking, time of shutdowns and President Trump, who would pursue federal? But it's relative to international relations and just getting an experience. Um, so we'll see how that goes. Of course, Department of Corrections is state. So the goal is not to be there necessarily long, no more than 2 years. Um, but to, however short we're there, even if it's 6 months, to be a blessing to those that are there, because they're there for to experience corrections in a way that includes emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental health. And so that when they re-enter society, they have the tools that they may not have been afforded before, maybe due to the way they were raised, and even if they were, um, it just wasn't a part of them. They didn't believe it because, or even if their life had been changed because of corrections, where they maintain good mental health and don't let it, put them down, have them disconnect from themselves. So I pray that we will continue to be a blessing in all that we do and everyone that we touch, everyone that listens to us and support, um, you know, more clarity into making this happen, and meeting who we need to meet, being connected with God, staying connected to God, and that this happened. It's all in God's hands, and with God, all things are possible. So this has been a Late Late Show with BT. Bye.